Walt's voice grew softer, more distant, as if he were staring through time itself. August 69. Northeast of Quang Tri. Me and 5 others. Young. Dumb. Thought we were invincible. Caleb didn't speak. He simply listened, every muscle still. They dropped us in just before dusk, Walt said, his voice steady. Thick canopy. Comms were crap. Storm interfered with everything. No drone coverage back then. You were on your own. The mission was recon, check out rumors of a weapons cache. They told us we'd be in and out. 48 hours. Minimal contact. He scoffed, low and bitter. All lies. Walt's gaze drifted past Caleb, past the walls of the diner, out into memories that still burned. The jungle was alive. Wet, heavy. Bugs you couldn't see until they were crawling in your gear. Snipers hiding in trees. You couldn't trust the silence, it was always waiting to break. Caleb nodded, slowly. He'd never been in Vietnam, but war had a way of speaking the same language, no matter the country. Second day, we saw movement. Thought it was a local farmer at first. Turned out it was a scout. VC, the whole place lit up minutes later. Ambush from 3 sides. Walt's hand trembled slightly, barely visible. Caleb noticed, but said nothing. First shot took Jenkins. Right in the chest. Kid was barely old enough to shave. Screamed once. Then he was gone. Walt paused, jaw tightening. He tapped his knuckles once on the table, like knocking on a coffin lid. We returned fire, but it was chaos. No clear line of sight. Leaves and bullets flying. Bradley went down with shrapnel in his leg. Monroe lost his pack in the mud. I tried flanking left when something hit my leg. Thought it was a mine. Turned out to be a grenade. Caught my shin. Caleb's mouth was dry. You kept going. I crawled, Walt said. Didn't think. Just moved. Saw Gomez bleeding out 10 feet away, crying for his mom. Had a chunk of metal in his neck. I pulled him behind a tree. Tourniqueted him with my own shirt. Went back out. Got another. Then another. Walt's voice dropped to a whisper. 2 didn't make it. Jenkins and Fenton. Fenton bled out in my arms. He rubbed the side of his face, as if trying to erase the image. The brass didn't like the story, he continued. Said we weren't supposed to be there. Report got buried. Wrapped in red tape. Told us to shut up. Gave me a purple heart in an envelope. No ceremony. Just a list of things I wasn't allowed to talk about. Caleb clenched his jaw. That's criminal. That's war, Walt said. The truth only matters when it looks good on TV. He went quiet again. Caleb didn't rush. Let the silence stretch. I told my mama I'd come home a hero, Walt murmured. She cried when she saw my leg. Thought heroes walked tall. You were a hero, Caleb said. No, Walt replied. I was a Marine who didn't want to die. That's different. The storm outside had dwindled to a mist, barely tapping on the glass. Inside, the air between them had changed, more reverent now. You remembered all their names, Caleb said quietly. That says everything. Walt didn't answer. But in the way his hands tightened around his cup, Caleb saw it, the weight, the pain, the honor. To be continued. Next segment will explore the aftermath, Walt's homecoming, and how Caleb processes the truth he's just heard. Caleb looked down, the image of Amir flashing through his mind. He swallowed hard, then said, he was gone before we could reach him. Walt nodded once. Good men make choices others don't understand. They act not because they're fearless, but because someone has to. I think about him every day, Caleb said. Sometimes, I wonder if I could have done more. You couldn't, Walt said gently. But I know that won't stop the guilt. It doesn't ever stop. The air between them hung heavy with unspoken truths. Walt sipped his coffee. Caleb followed, the silence less awkward now, more like an old companion sitting at the table. So why here? Caleb asked. Why Marcy's Diner? Walt smirked. Because they leave me alone. Coffee's hot. No one asks questions. But you knew, someday, someone might recognize you. I figured if it happened, it happened. Caleb stared at him for a long moment. You know, I think people need your story. Guys like you. You're not just legends, we're walking in your shadow. You built the path. Walt didn't speak. He just tapped the rim of his mug. I don't owe the world anything, he said finally. But maybe I owe something to the ones who didn't come back. He leaned back, eyes staring through the diner window. Outside, the rain was easing, softening to a whisper. For the first time, Caleb noticed Walt's hands, scarred, strong, and steady, resting on the table like anchors. I've only told that story once before, Walt said. To a bartender in Jacksonville. I was drunk. He wasn't listening. Caleb smiled faintly. I'm listening. Walt exhaled deeply, like he was drawing breath from decades ago. Then, he began. August 69. Northeast of Quang Tri. Me and 5 others. Young. Dumb. Thought we were invincible. To be continued in the next segment, expanding the combat story and aftermath with full cinematic and emotional depth as we build toward the 20,000-word target, the legend in the corner booth. It was raining sideways the morning everything changed, not the soft kind of rain that whispers on windows, but the sharp, stinging kind that slaps pavement, drenches sidewalks, and drives people indoors. Inside Marcy's Diner, the windows fogged with warmth. The smell of bacon and burnt coffee hung heavy in the air, as it always did. A small, no-frills place, just 2 waitresses, a cook you never saw, and enough regulars to keep the lights on. In the back corner booth by the window sat Walter Drummond. Most folks just called him Mr. Walt. He didn't speak much. Never did. Same booth. Same black coffee. Same eggs, over easy, toast dry. No fuss. No phone. Just the newspaper and an occasional cough into his napkin. If you weren't looking close, you'd never think twice about him. But that Tuesday morning, someone did. That someone was Caleb Mercer, a 24-year-old Navy SEAL. Fresh off a grueling tour and a bad breakup, he wasn't looking for anything, just shelter from the storm and something hot to eat. His aunt had told him Marcy's was old but reliable. He figured she meant it was cheap. Caleb walked in, hoodie soaked, boots squishing with each step. He nodded to the woman at the counter, wiped his shoes on the mat, and scanned the room for an empty seat. Then he saw him. Mr. Walt stirred his coffee, his sleeve pushed just high enough to reveal a tattoo. Faded, weathered, but unmistakable to trained eyes, a skull inside a parachute, 2 crossed arrows underneath. 1st Recon Battalion. Caleb froze. Not from fear. Not confusion. But recognition. Like a word you've tried to recall for years suddenly surfacing in your mind. The waitress's voice snapped him back. You all right, hun? He blinked. Yeah. Sorry. I'll sit over there. He didn't point. He didn't need to. His feet already moved toward the booth. The closer he got, the louder the questions raced through his mind. Could it really be him? That tattoo wasn't common, this wasn't the kind of ink you saw on bar bouncers. It was old school, rare. Reserved for a breed of Marine that few even spoke of anymore. Caleb had heard stories, one in particular. A black recon scout in Vietnam. Guy pulled 5 men out of a kill zone with no radio, no backup, and a shattered leg. Crawled them through the jungle for 2 days, bleeding the whole way. The man never gave interviews. Never accepted a medal. Just vanished when the war ended. Some said he died. Others claimed the government buried his story. Now, here he was. Sitting in a diner. Like it meant nothing. Caleb took a breath, approached the booth. "Sir, excuse me," he said, his voice tight. Mr. Walt didn't look up. "I couldn't help but notice your tattoo, that's first recon, right?" A pause. Then, a voice rough with time, "Long time ago." "Were you Vietnam?" Caleb asked. "I was a lot of places," Walt replied. "You military?" "Yes, sir." "Navy SEAL?" Walt looked up briefly, eyes cloudy with age, flicking over Caleb's face like scanning an old map. Then back to his coffee. "What do you want?" Caleb hesitated. "To say thank you." Walt finally gave him a real look, slow, deliberate. "What for?" "You don't know me," Caleb said. "But if you're who I think you are, then you're the reason I joined." Walt tapped his spoon against the cup, once. Twice. Then gestured to the seat across from him. "You eat yet?" "No, sir." "Then sit. No one talks on an empty stomach." Caleb slid into the booth. The vinyl stuck to his damp clothes. He didn't care. He sat upright, like back in a mission briefing. Mr. Walt, meanwhile, moved like time had stopped bothering him years ago. He sipped his coffee. Let silence stretch. The waitress approached. "Coffee?" "Yes, please," Caleb replied. "You want food?" "I'll have what he's having." Walt raised an eyebrow, barely. Brave man. They overcook the eggs every time. The waitress smiled, then walked off. Caleb exhaled a little. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said, fiddling with a sugar packet. "It's just, that tattoo. You don't see many like it." "No," Walt said, "you don't. You know what it means. First Recon. Marine Corps. One of the oldest. That's the pamphlet version." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Sleeves rolled higher now, Caleb saw more than the tattoo. Scars around it. Faded burns. Lines like bark, old wounds carved into flesh. "You ever get dropped into the middle of nowhere with just a map and a canteen?" Walt asked. "Not a map," Caleb said. "GPS. But yeah. Afghanistan. Syria. Philippines." Walt studied him again. Different wars. Same mess. Their food came. Toast. Eggs. Limp bacon. Walt nodded to the waitress. Caleb took a bite but barely tasted it. He didn't want to push too hard, but this man was a door that rarely opened. He had to knock, carefully. "People used to talk about you," Caleb said. "In training. Some said you were a myth." Walt let out a dry chuckle. "That's the best thing a soldier can be after a war. A myth means you kept quiet. You saved 5 men. Wasn't 6, Walt corrected. 1 bled out halfway through. Name was Fenton. North Carolina boy. Good aim. Bad luck." The air changed. Caleb felt it. The weight of unspoken names. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be," Walt replied. "Just means you listen." Walt pushed his plate away, appetite gone. Caleb took another bite, unsure if it was hunger or nerves. "I didn't come back to parades," Walt said. "Didn't expect any. They didn't want men like me on front pages. Black face, battlefield hero. That don't sell newspapers. Caleb looked down. He'd read the reports. Knew the history. How many veterans, especially black ones, came home to rejection, not respect. I didn't know what happened to you, Caleb said. Nobody did. That's 'cause I didn't want them to, Walt said. You get tired of answering questions about the worst days of your life. Caleb hesitated. You ever lose someone? A few, Walt said. You. My best friend. Amir. IED outside Kandahar. Walt looked up. No pity. Just shared pain. When Walt finally finished, it was as if he'd come back from a place no one else had dared visit in decades. Caleb sat there, still, reverent. The weight of those words didn't just linger, they anchored. You ever talk to anyone about it? Caleb asked gently. You mean like a shrink? Walt replied with a dry chuckle. Once. At the VA, guy had soft hands and a notepad. Told me I had survivor's guilt. Gave me some pills. Said it'd pass. Did it? No. I just stopped showing up. They fell quiet again. The soft clink of a spoon in a nearby coffee cup. The hum of the old refrigerator behind the counter. Outside, a single car passed slowly, tires whispering on wet asphalt. You know what the worst part is? Walt said. I was more alive in that jungle. Bleeding, scared, half crazy, but more alive than I've ever been since. Caleb nodded slowly. I know that feeling. Walt looked at him. You seen it too? Yeah, Caleb said. We were in the mountains last year. Rained for 6 days straight. We were soaked, exhausted, starving. But there was this one night, we were circled up, watching the RGL line, and I felt clear. Like everything made sense. Like the world was real, finally. And then you come home, Walt added, and a soft bed feels like a coffin. Exactly. They shared a quiet smile. It wasn't joy. It was understanding. You ever find a way to carry it better? Caleb asked. Walt thought a moment. You find one thing that's real. Something that makes staying worth it. Could be a person. Could be a promise. Could be pancakes. Caleb grinned. Pancakes. Walt shrugged. Marcy's does right on Fridays. They laughed. Not loud. Not forced. But the kind of laugh that reminded them they were still human. Caleb sobered. I think my one thing might be sitting across from me right now. Walt didn't speak. But something in his eyes softened. Like a long-forgotten part of him had been seen, and maybe, just maybe, remembered. You don't have to carry it alone, Caleb said. I know, Walt replied. But sometimes, we do. So others don't have to. The storm had passed now. Sunlight peeked through the thinning clouds. The street outside glistened like it had been washed clean. Can I ask you something personal? Caleb said, voice tentative. Walt arched an eyebrow. More personal than dragging 5 guys through a jungle with a busted leg? Caleb chuckled. Fair. But yeah. Walt nodded once. Go ahead. Do you regret it? Walt didn't answer immediately. He looked out the window, watching a child and his father run through puddles, laughing. Every day, he said. Then added, but not for the reason you think. Caleb leaned in. I don't regret going. Don't regret the scars, or the noise. I regret what I brought home. I regret who I became. You mean bitter? Caleb asked. No, Walt said. I mean invisible. The silence returned. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was sacred. I didn't think about legacy, Walt said. I just wanted to live. And now, here you are. Carrying my name around like it means something. It does mean something, Caleb said. To me. To people like me, it means everything. I never had kids, Walt said softly. Figured no one would remember me once I was gone. You were wrong about that, Caleb said. Walt gave a slow, almost shy smile. Doesn't happen often. But yeah. I guess I was.